Jill is coming in. We have Jill.
Okay. Jill Keen.
Hi, Jill.
She's not connected yet. Come on in. Hi, Jill.
Hey, you guys.
We're recording for content.
We're working on building content. Now, if we could just get Katie and her whole group over here, that would be great too.
Well, I'll bang that drum for you.
Yeah, I think we're trying to build the best possible learning platform for people to gather. So,
well, I think that
support you want to give us in that regard, Jill, would be greatly appreciated.
Well, I think that I think people are hungry for it. They just, they just aren't used to a gathering place. So Katie proved that, we proved that, like with the West Coast Acutonics groups that we do, because you watch that stuff fly by all the time, and it's a mishmash, but it's a really connected mishmash. So there's like always about 5 conversations going on in there, and there's little nuggets all the time. There's treatments in there. This is how I think about this in there. And I think the most valuable thing about it has been, this is how I think about this, because then you're hitting the practical application of Acutonics, which just gets richer every day. I mean, every day, especially if you're watching the spiritual vending machines that are running right now, because that's what they are, right? You put in a quarter, you get out of practice. And you're especially watching people like Pam Gregory in the astrology with all the asteroids coming in. And all of those asteroids are all female, and they're bringing all this wisdom in that we've all been waiting for.
That's right.
And I was looking at my forks the other day, and I was thinking about you guys, and I'm like, why didn't they make a Sedna asteroid fork?
Oh, super high frequency, you mean?
Yeah. So I was,
we might.
Yeah, because that whole set of Hygeia I use all the time, and it's life-changing.
Yeah.
So there needs to be, the way that the planets work are really changing, and how we practice with them is really changing.
Yeah.
So when you look at the intuitive spiritual aspects of Acutonics, which are now really waking up, because you know how crazy I am about that, the practice begins to not shift but grow. It grows. And the wisdom that you guys installed with the planets, layered on the practical aspects of the meridians, but then adding like the deeper practice with the extraordinaries, everything's just growing.
Yeah. And in comes Hygeia.
But I love what you just said, Jill, about the high frequency Sedna. I mean, the whole idea of how much we need Sedna right now. And
it is we can look at taking off, or either having that foot on, because we want that higher frequency installed in the physical form. But I think it's just another
one more fork
frequency, an octave higher. Because her role, as we'll talk about here with Hygeia, becomes profound.
It's huge. It's like sacredness of water.
Yeah.
It's like it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Hi, Nolan. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
I
didn't realize you guys haven't met. So
yeah, I was admiring your Hygeia colored shirt.
Oh, that's just I didn't even do it on purpose.
Here we are. Yeah, I'm gonna get started with the facilitating a little bit, just so we can keep on track to have a structured recording. I think after that, let's totally riff and do more of a Q&A. So the first part of this is meant to be to learn a little bit more about the conceptualization of Hygeia. It was such a odd, weird time when it was developed and inceptioned in the Acutonic system, and now it seems like it's really has become its own, and everyone has made it their own and incorporated it into their own personal practices. So the goal, or the background of why we wanted to do this video, was to give people a little bit of insight into all of the creative energy and the creative process that happens when, like you were just talking about with Sedna bringing in a new fork, you know, how does an idea become an inception, become a physical tool, become spinned off into the greater Acutonics community?
And have context for the bigger, the bigger picture.
Yes, exactly. So I'll go I'll just run through start some interview questions, and then after that we'd love to have Q&A with everyone, or Jill, or if anyone else joins, we can keep discussing, or make it a conversation, you know, however everyone wants to operate. It's, you know,
We're here.
it's really more
We're
of a,
talking about Hygeia, adding content it's not like people have to be in real time anymore.
yes.
Because time is non-linear now with Zoom, so they can pick it up, watch it, do whatever they want, whenever they want.
Well, and
Yeah.
Hygeia is really a part of that, because
Yeah.
Hygeia gives us this whole idea of multidimensional action.
Yeah.
You know, how can we move in so many different layers
Yes.
and levels? And I think her birth was a timely thing. Donna, you want
So what would you describe would be like the main qualities for somebody that's just kind of stepping in and wanting to learn more about Hygeia? What are the main qualities that she
Well,
brings?
I would go back to the word itself, Hygeia, which we coined heightened genome for intradimensional and extra-dimensional awareness. So I think when I would put it aware mess to awareness.
Yeah.
Right? When you think of all the neural networks that she's touching, I always looked at her as a bridge to the source field. And what she's doing is taking the planets, people, and all things to their purest and highest form and spirit level. And I would say that her frequencies are giving us a kind of a CRISPR technology of consciousness. And she's, in a sense, we're all getting new operating systems, and we're feeling that. And I think we have to talk a little bit about how she presented herself and where she's placed. She's helping us move, because where her frequency lies is between our zodiacal Earth, which is Earth through the precessional cycle, and so she's in between the zodiac and Nibiru. So there's a lot of stress, because we're, as a world, as cultures, as societies, we're in this cusp, and there's a lot of stressors being put on us. So in a sense, with these zodiacal ages, when you look at the bigger cycles of time, we're talking, if you subscribe to the yogas and the ages, we're saying 24,000. If you're looking to Anastarskis and all the whole ideology of precessional cycle, then we're talking 25,900. So it's just not like a weekend thing. We're in this period of tremendous stress, moving from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. So we're being kind of nudged out of all of the ruts that are the skipping records in our own life and the life of our planet in history and in time. And we're moving into something a lot bigger, because this could be a whole nother hour to talk about what does that mean to move from the Aquarian age to the Piscean age? You know, we're basically
From the Piscean age to the Aquarian.
to the Aquarian age. We're talking about a lot of the things we're seeing right now in history and culture, moving out of monotheism, moving out of gurus, moving out of all of these illusions and drug abuse and all of that, and escapism, into more of a collective phenomena where the individual can still be a superstar, but it's within a context of a community and what's right and just, and what is going to move that community to its higher frequencies, its higher forms, its higher structures. So that's what I would definitely say about how I would describe her. So she's giving us new operating systems. She's moving us, pushing us, she's lying in the middle of a couple of different things. First of all, she's in the center of the asteroids.
Yeah.
Second,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I was listening to the tone and just kind of meditating on what it sounds like to me this morning. And, when you talk about leading us, I totally pick up on this quality of strength
right.
and kind of purity and strength is what I kept coming to me. And, those are the qualities of a leader, right? Those are what the thing that's running into the fire, and or it's the one that's creating a wake or a path forward even.
Right.
um those are definitely some of the qualities that came to me. So when you were how did the original thought of this come? How, I know it came during the pandemic, but how did the pandemic itself influence the creativity of the new character?
I think when you think about the Greek word hygiene, it really translates to soundness or wholeness. And, hygiene in medicine was really about maintaining the integrity of wholeness in the body and to keep it in balance. And this goes back to the Hippocratic Oath. It goes back to over 300 CE, before the Common Era. And it gradually formulated into a philosophy of hygiene that covered all aspects of health. And that includes mind, body, and the environment. And the influence of this thinking when we were living through the pandemic, trying to turn Acutonics around from being a hands-on in person to being online, and really thinking about what the world was facing in the pandemic. She both Donna and I, she really came front and center. And we've been talking about Hygeia for a while. Our teacher and distributor in Japan, Izumi Masakawa, had brought up Hygeia to us, and Donna and I have been talking with her about it. And really,
I think the possibility was that, looking at the time of the pandemic and just looking at what was going on in the world. I mean,
Yeah.
she was discovered, in the 17th century but planets come into consciousness, they're always there.
Yeah.
Or the asteroids, but when we need them, when the need is there, something steps in. And when it just came to me one time, it was a William Blake quote: if we can cleanse the gates of perception, all things would be like they should be, infinite. And I thought, there we go. We have this world, we're all masked, we're fighting, we're divided, we don't have good energetic
hygiene at all.
And certainly when we talk about sanitation, we're going way back to the Romans, but certainly we started to have those conversations in the beginning about hygiene and masking and all of that. But what is she telling us? How can we work toward that past the isolation and alienation that, the pandemic brought? And how can we move to maybe what she is teaching, which really to how to keep up with these inevitable changes that are pressing and getting people disconnected and constantly evolve and
It's so interesting because when you take a step back and see what was happening and how that was reflected in the culture at the time, even though people were masked up and everything, that's when Me Too movement happened. That's when Black Lives Matter happened. And people were probably the most aware of and willing to jump in and push things forward during that period.
I think that's again the Aquarian push for self-realization and for things to be fair and just, not to have like a misogynistic, racist, xenophobic culture. It's where we moved from Pisces, where men had long hair, or women wore suits, to something more Aquarian, which is gender fluidity, human rights, getting rid of, it's moving out of the 60s where people were taking drugs to escape versus, okay, maybe it helps communities, maybe it helps the individual get to higher awareness. We're seeing more things realized, more individual rights. So I think all of these pushes, and you're right, the Me Too movements, the individual freedoms, and here we are right in the middle of, overturning of Roe v. Wade, and we have all of these clashes, and we have two different slogans, the old cult versus we're not going back, we're moving forward. We're not
That's
gonna.
very telling.
I think there's
So
another,
that's the pressures
yeah.
between ages that Hygeia is helping us to open up to infinite possibilities and to engage and see things in new ways, whether
I
it's.
think there's one other aspect though that is important. We always look at the morphology of planets when we think about what drives the archetypes, what drives the mythos, and the formation of Hygeia was something that spoke to me and spoke to the times we were experiencing, because scientists believe that she was created through a powerful impact that completely shattered the planetoid.
She was a protoplanet.
And then
before.
she came back together almost perfectly formed. So this whole idea of shattering our perceptions of life, of things as they are, breaking them apart, and then coming back stronger and more whole and more connected than we were before. And so that really spoke to some of the things we're talking about with Me Too and some of the other movements that we were seeing about shattering where things are and really looking at opportunities to recreate ourselves in a more healthy and holistic way. And that to me really spoke to what Hygeia represents.
And then what did we have one during Hygeia was this Aquarian impulse moving through where with the Ethernet, with even Zoom, how communities would interact and connect. And all of these things like 5G, like all these telecommunications, different way, voice over IP, we don't need those lines anymore, AI. So these are all places that we're moving to, but the Aquarian age, everything is rapido. And I think Hygeia says, slow down, have the ethics, have the integrity. Focus on your consciousness, focus on self-hygiene, focus, yes, on personal freedom and motivations, and but also care about some larger context, which
So does the larger context, is that some of the reasoning for expanding Hygeia to more octaves than some of the other sets? You want to talk a little bit about maybe some of the design choices that were made and how you decided to expand it even more?
Well, I think I kind of always have a direction. Like I know that I'm going north or south, but I don't know always the degree and the place I'm getting to. But I thought, just from all my work with Steiner, and I'm not a musician, I know music theory, I'm more intuitive with intervals and practice. But I would say that we've been living in the fifth, which is like maybe opening a chance to move here, a chance to move there. But when we talk about octaves, we talk about major leaps. And again, that's why I say about the placement of her, as we can talk about the interval she creates with Earth or Om, which is a third. Same with Zodiac, right? Same with Nibiru. Nibiru is a minor third. And so it's placed, so we have to look at the zodiac and the themes we've been talking about, and then those Niburian themes, you know, about releasing people from slavery, from their relationship to money and gold, to this whole idea of suppression or genome tampering. And now we have AI, so we are becoming the gods again. And we have to have some guardrails on there, and I think because of the purity of Hygeia and what she tells us, she creates tension on both of those points, because if we're doing interplanetary intervals with Nibiru, zodiac, or Nibiru Hygeia, we're going to get that pushing microtone to bust loose. But where's the place to go? I mean, you can leap, yeah, you can take baby steps, or you can leap into the octave.
And I think the other piece of this that we found when we started working with the frequencies is that when you combined Hygeia at any octave with the other planetary tools, she lifted that planet to its highest potential. So if you're combining Hygeia with Pluto, for example, you know, we always think of Pluto as taking us into the deep, dark underworld and accessing the traumas and the toxicities. The other part of Pluto is Pluto accessed the gems, the minerals, the wealth of the earth. And so if you start to think about what is the highest form of Saturn, or what is the highest form of Mercury, Hygeia helps them envision and see it. And you actually see that in how the intervallic relationships play out in a healing session.
Yeah, that's so profound. Yeah, and that all goes back to the myth of Hygeia being that leader, right? To pushing things.
The cauldron,
and
and the cauldron where all things get healed, right, and become whole again. And it's
in the toxic.
right.
Yeah, that's what I envisioned when I saw the graphic from the Hygeia class of all the musical notes and how Hygeia, you know, is all up and below, almost as if it becomes the water that everything else can swim in, but it's, you know, instead of the toxic lagoon, you're bathing everything in a sterile, hygienic situation.
You know, one of the other aspects I think of Hygeia that comes from the planet, you know, our understanding of the planet, the way that she clinically behaves, is this whole idea of her mythic roots being encoded in the snake and the bird. And when you think about the snake, so much of what happens in the myths that we are told is the snake becomes evil. But the snake was never evil. The snake was a guardian of women's culture. The snake was connected to Gaia. And even look at Hygeia's name. Hygeia's name contains Gaia in it, the earth. And I think the positive aspects of the female snake, which is emblematic of primordial life and emerging from ancient waters, and how we can all be lifted up and come to wholeness and reclaim that guardian of the female, that guardian of the, and it's not just male or female, it's that feminine aspect of life that all of us have. We're all the anima and the animus, the yin and the yang is contained within all of us. But because of, you know, the historical path we've been on of subjugating women and trying to suppress them and suppress their vote, suppress their rights, reclaiming the snake. And Hygeia helps us to think about, how do we reclaim that? How do we come back to embracing that idea?
It's a great visual tool. I love that.
Well,
and like you said, she's going in and out, but that's where we start to look at her role, and when we can say she's an integrator, a translator, an interpolator, and an extrapolator because we look at her relational qualities with the other planets. That's the known things, the known variables, right? Those things we know, and from what we know of Hygeia and what we know of the other planets and our experience and wisdom from that, we know how she's going to act. But then she's acting outside the extra dimensional as an independent variable that's outside of all the things like extra dimensions, exoplanets, the substrate, the source field, right? The new quantum physics, the new technologies, the new biologies. But we can, through all of our work, really start to predict how she'll act when she's indoctrinated into the rich experience and interactions with all these other planets, and where she can take our minds and our bodies and our consciousness. So that's why it's been so exciting working with her and her relational aspects. And I think when we start to combine her with something like Sedna, that we've laid down this new architecture for a long time, the spiritual architecture to step into, and now we're getting the push. Sedna's giving us the bones, right? And Sedna's giving us that soliton energy to superconduct. But she's said with Hygeia, we have a more solid earth, more energy, more enterprising. She's taking us out of that tribalism and victimhood that's a part of the lower vibration of Sedna, and her need for vengeance, which is playing out all over the world right now, and her impulses for punishment and law and order, and into a higher level of social justice and collectivism. Because I think that is when we start, and this combination of the Sedna Hygeia fourth or fifth, like almost a tritone, we can tap into that those superconductive rings, and then get into quantum tunneling, quantum biology.
Thanks so much for sharing all of your. So I'm learning quite a lot.
So
Are there I moving on to a little bit more of the other sound tools. You've had a special relationship with Paiste for a long time. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that relationship is and how you work with them when developing the Hygeia gong?
So Donna has
meet German males, meet New Age females.
I'm sold.
So what I want to do is say, Donna, long before Acutonics was created and was a company, Donna had a vision of working with planets and planetary energies. And before there were tuning forks, there were gongs. So way back in Madison, Wisconsin, Donna acquired one of, we just met, so it was over 30 years ago, one of the very first sets of planetary gongs that Paiste made. And she set them up in her clinic in Madison, Wisconsin, and started working with them, started incorporating them into treatments, and really began to understand that the power of working with these large planetary bodies through gongs. Later on, the forks came into play. We both moved to Seattle, and Acutonics was born. But the gongs themselves were an integral part of where we started. And that relationship we have with Paiste, 30 years old. And it really goes back to Donna's passion for working with these large entities that had come to her.
Probably we're talking about 11th dimensional physics when we talk about a gong, and even it's what it's made of. It's the metals inside of it and its structure. And then when you think of the physical pounding and the malleability, and then if we get into M theory and quantum physics, and then we get to levels of string theory where you can pull strings out of membranes. I always think of a gong as that 11th dimensional hyper and subharmonic that can take you into very different places. But I think with Paiste, you always have the ideas versus the implementation. I always had the ideas and the frequencies, and these guys implemented it. But it's not so easy because, they are also artists, and this metal is not an easy medium. But I think like any artist, and we've met the guys and we really love them. But an artist will breathe life into whatever medium. But I feel like it's the artist that's taking that frequency that they're aiming for in that metal, and they're actually superconducting
Through every hammer
through the archetypes, through the frequency, through the layers of the sound, and each pound. If you look at the back of a gong, you'll see many marks, and it's layered. And that's why it's so difficult with these things, because if they do go out of that range in the back of a gong like 5 times, they have to toss the gong. Then it's so that's why I love the planets. A gong becomes an exotic, or basically a symphonic gong, that misses the mark on a planet.
So one of the things I just wanted to say is, we have the original, thank you, Donna. We have the original.
But these guys are artists. Artists,
yes.
This is artists. They're a small company. They do quality work, and nobody can compare.
There isn't anyone making a gong. Even the people who have split off from Paiste who are making, the quality is just not the same. But the point I was going to make is, so we had the original Cousteau frequencies, and those were foundational to how we started Acutonics. We raised everything up multiple octaves. But we went on, as we learned clinically and worked with the system over the last 30 years, we learned things were missing. And we started to see clinically that there were pieces of the planetary world that needed to be brought into our system. And when, we've talked about this in our classes, how the zeitgeist of when a planet is developed and comes into human consciousness, what that really represents. And so when Sedna was discovered, not only did we know she belonged, and that was, I think, 2003, not only did we know she belonged within Acutonics, we knew that we needed not just tuning forks, but a gong. And so we started working with it clinically, and the frequencies for Sedna, Chiron, which we also developed and introduced, Nibiru, and most recently Hygeia, are all the frequencies developed by Donna through her knowledge of our system, the depth of our system, the notes that were missing, the frequencies that were missing.
And also application of something that is hard for people to move out of, which is a static model of how we used to do things. We're not living in the time of Johannes Kepler anymore. We know.
Thank God.
We have better tools. We have better physics. We can't use the same formulas to predict and work with things, a planet like Nibiru, before everything was fixed, right? And we had something that lied outside the asteroid belt, or the gravitational pull pulled asteroids, stored it, made it moons, and things were kind of their own system. Then comes Nibiru, crosses in between, and an elliptic comes from way out in the Oort cloud, right? So now we have a different set of physics. We're not in Oz anymore. We're not in Kansas. So we can't.
It's a different script. Yeah.
It is. It's different script. And so a lot of people out there are like, well, that's not, when I use Kepler's formula, that's not what I got. I'm like, well, I'm not surprised, because we're out of that. We're into a more dynamic system. And I think originally when we were doing work on Nibiru, you did the research with the binary,
No,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah, the binary.
binary research institute about solar lunar cresses. And maybe that the precessional cycle isn't even really what we think it is. So
Right. Yeah.
we're moving out of the more static to more dynamic
Yeah.
model.
It always fascinates me too, because you kind of have to watch where people's minds go when they start thinking about some of these concepts, because I remember being taught about um, waves and waveforms, and right, you mostly see it as a very 2D function, and it's written on a chalkboard or a dry erase board. It's yes, you see the X and Y, but you don't really get a concept for what the Z axis is until you can actually feel or visualize it in your head, right? And it's not this, it's this, right? It's a spiral. It's not a flat plane. So it always fascinates me where people's perspectives are on that.
And that is, so is time and space, right? I mean, our concepts of them, and yeah.
constantly evolving. So the four gongs, because you asked about our relationship. So four of the gongs, Sedna, Chiron, Nibiru, and now Hygeia, were made for us by Paiste. And Paiste,
We did the design.
we did the logo design, we gave them the frequencies, they started selling them openly. And so when we came to Hygeia, it was proposed to us that we sell it exclusively, that we retain it as obviously it's our intellectual property, and that we have exclusive distribution for the Hygeia gong. So we're happy with that. We feel like we have an incredible gong. Jill, don't you have Hygeia? And the stories that
I want one though.
we have
I
yours
have
here.
yours here.
The stories that we're hearing from people that are working with it. Katie Fisher in
yeah.
Hawaii told us recently that she got really negative people who had moved in next to her healing school, her massage school, that by playing Hygeia a lot, the whole thing shifted, and I think they actually moved out of the conference.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
I'm reminded of some of the questions that we came up with. What is Hygeia asking us? And Hygeia is asking us, do we want a better place? Do we want a better future?
Want a more equal society?
Yeah,
Do
totally.
we want to grow?
Do we want a better world? Can we use these vast range of all these technologies to
in a positive way?
And how can we get everything, all these archetypes and all these things operating at their highest level? And how can we make not just the mythologies, upgrade them to have them actually working for us and draw the deeper wisdom and value out of those, because we created those in the first place.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
So how can we get everything working at its highest level? I guess that is really how I see Hygeia, because she's more the consciousness behind all those images that we create, and the archetypes and the identity behind the mask, which is how it came to us in the pandemic. What is the consciousness behind the mask?
Yeah.
And that,
Oh.
thought about what's the archetype of that? And archetypes, just like us, don't just participate in time, but they're time itself. And space itself. They're light and sound. They're solitons that are capable of superconduction through vibrational and genetic shifting. And how can we make everything work?
Well, thank you so much both for sharing all your knowledge. I think there's so much to unpack, but it's so awesome hearing it from you directly. I think everyone really appreciates hearing a little bit more about the back end and the development in particular.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's going to be excited to start implementing Hygeia more in their practice after hearing even more and more. And one of the goals is to make it more and more accessible from, a higher elective class, to make it more accessible for beginners or people that want to, maybe they've taken level 1, 2, 3 and really want to start implementing some more of these other forks and archetypes into their practice in particular. So
can make that work with just starting it simple to the multi octaves with the multi-octave ohms or something like that. But I think where it really gets juicy is when we start working with her with Sedna and Peru, and start to unwind all those collective traumas, because that's where she just says, new operating system, new reset, don't have the drama. I don't need sacrifices from you. I don't need this. I don't need that. We just do it.
Well,
Yeah.
let's address trauma without
Yeah.
drama is really
Yeah.
when I think about
trauma
it.
without
Trauma
drums.
without drama.
Let's just separate reality from illusion and see where we're at, because that's going to be a big thing for helping everybody just stand in the middle and just stand strong with all of this, all of these pushings against our nervous systems and our world and all of
Jill, were there any questions or anything that you wanted to ask?
I have like days worth of questions, but
Yeah. Well, when Nolan asked us to do a half hour, we're like,
I know you're already over.
I got an hour just at it.
Well, if I gave them an hour, it would be 2 hours. So
yeah.
I can't. The Hygeia is just a game changer, and when I left my corporate world, my team gave me a gift, and they gave me a Niebuhr gong, and I'm like, oh God, why? And I looked at the Niebuhr gong, and I had to get a gong to go with her, so I'm going to get Hygeia, and it sits on my stand, Niebuhr and Hygeia, and I'm like, why do I have 2 e-gongs? Why do I have 2 e-gongs, right? And I looked at them, and I realized that. So let's think about let's think about third chakra, and it just dawned on me that this is the shift in consciousness from I am to we are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then I cried for a while.
Yeah.
And I was already using Hygeia in all my treatments, but she creates in the quantum all possibilities.
Right.
And then when you shift that consciousness to the higher of all things, then you're in that still point. You're in that beautiful still point. So I love you guys. Thank you. And
You're welcome. Thank you. I wish we could see you.
you can't see
You can see.
I mean, I
them here.
could visit, and well,
Oh,
who knows? We might be coming to San Francisco.
we don't know. We'll see.
We'll
yeah.
We'll see. But it'd be great to see you, and I would love to talk to you about Hygeia and a lot more.
Yeah, it's just exciting. It's just exciting times, and you guys have given us such a gift, and that gift it keeps changing all of the time. And I've said this to you guys: if it weren't for you and this program, I don't know if I would have survived these times, because you changed the way I think about everything. So I thank
Thanks
you
for sharing that.
Very much. But did we change your golf game?
No, Cisco kind of. I'm working on it. I'm actually taking lessons to get my swing back. So, but we'll play together.
Okay, yep, we all got to come up swinging.
Yep.
Right now, it's needed.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna post the recording to the Cosmos platform, and yeah, thanks again everyone for participating. And this is the first of hopefully many pieces of sharing amazing information for Hygeia is this month, and then October we're going to be doing Ohm, and we'll see where we go from there.
Oh.
Going back home.
October. Yeah.
Going back. How about reimagining Earth?
Yeah.
falling back in love with our home planet.
Yep.
Seeing how we can upgrade it. I mean, we have Sedna to help, but.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
much too
having
much.
just gotten back from the Arctic, we're gonna need a lot of help.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll do a talk and you can debrief on your
We'll
Arctic
talk.
travel.
And we'll talk about our travel.
Our 20
All
years
right. Thanks,
in the Arctic.
Thanks, Nolan. Thanks, Jill.
thanks, Jill. Good to meet you.